Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University. We're rolling on into the fall. If you can believe it, you're back in school, hopefully. Back in your dorms, hopefully, back into campus life, hopefully, and even back into maybe a little football. And we've got a very, very special guest today. Great story of how we met, and a great entrepreneur, providing a tremendous resource to all of you students who we've talked about a lot, going into a post-COVID environment. The entry-level job market is going to be brutal. A lot of people in the country unemployed, marketing services unemployed. A lot of people are going to be trying to get the same entry-level jobs that you would have been trying to get just a few months ago. And Isaac Morehouse is the founder and CEO of Crash. And I'm not going to do it justice, so I'm going to let him do it justice in a minute. The career launch platform, providing a lot of really, really great tools, resources, alternate forms of education. We know that a lot of people are beginning to question the commitment of time, money, and resources into a traditional university degree. It's on the forefront of everybody's tongues right now, the money, time, and resources. Helps job seekers find the best roles and win the job hunt the way they want to win it, the way they package themselves as a brand, the way they harness their passion, and a lot of things that we talk about on Melt U, and we've been talking about it for months. Isaac has really mastered this platform. Also started another business. He's a great serial entrepreneur, Praxis, which was a startup apprentice program, which he's just impacted so many people. And he's a guy after my own heart. He lives in Charleston, which I envy. We share the passion for smoking cigars, which we'll do one of those one day. I'm not sure about my guitar playing skills. And then he and I hopefully are going to have some great arguments about Big Ten and SEC football. But and he's also dedicated to the relentless pursuit of freedom. And I actually saw Isaac on a national television show even just a few weeks ago. And I was like, man, he's saying and doing a lot of things that I'm doing and I want to do. And I think I'm going to reach out to him. And we talk a lot about the reach out and the LinkedIn and all that. And we formed a really nice, fast friendship. Got a lot to do together in the future. But Isaac Morehouse, welcome to Virtual Melt University. It's an honor to have you on and share what Crash is all about and how it can help our students.
Hey, Vince, thanks for having me. It's funny, the news segment you saw me on, which is how we got connected, the way that came about is actually a great illustration of the way that I know you talk about approaching getting career opportunities. So I get this cold email just out of the blue. And it's actually the first time I appeared on Tucker Carlson was a couple of years ago. And I get an email saying, hey, would you like to come on Tucker Carlson and talk about, I think he was talking about universities and stuff like that, getting careers for college students. And I said, okay, great. And so I went and did this segment, and it blew up our website and everything. This was back before I started Crash, but went really well. Well, they came back to me a few times since then, and some other news shows, MSNBC and a Fox morning show. And this most recent one that you saw me on, again, blew up our whole website. In fact, we had so much traffic from it that Crash actually crashed for a few minutes.
Wow.
Despite
that's a high class problem.
Right, exactly. So, but the way that came about, I got an email after that first time that I went on there. I got an email from this guy that I knew. His name was Charles. He said, hey, Isaac, it's Charles here. You did a great job on the segment. I'm actually one of the producers for the show. And Tucker was talking about, he wanted to do a segment on college, and I've been following what you've been doing with Praxis, and I thought you should come on. And this blew me away because I knew Charles. He was in a program that I had run years earlier for an internship program. And he was actually one of the more quiet people there. He didn't really stand out, was a little bit more shy. And I just kind of made a point to connect with him. And after the program, I didn't keep in touch with him. I didn't know he was still following me. But all these years later, he had been paying attention to what I was doing and invited me on the show. And I think it's such a great example of like every time you interact with somebody, you're planting seeds and you just don't know where those people are going to go and when those seeds are going to mature, are going to, result in some fruit. And so the fact that I kind of took some time to, make sure I connected with one of the quieter people in this program I was running that could have just stuck in the back and I never would have talked to him, turns out to have this massive payoff in a great, publicity for our company years down the road. So that's kind of the way that I think about networking. It's not what can you do for me right now. It's what can I do for you, because I know that's going to pay off later.
Well, you've just hit a really, really, really great hot spot for us that we've covered many, many times. But before we even dive into the crash and Praxis, you've just hit on several things. First of all, you took the time and he took the time many years ago to pay attention to each other and begin that relationship building process. And there was nothing in it for basically either one of you, but we say the first two letters of relationship are RE and the first two letters of reciprocal are RE. But over time, this relationship nurtured and built. You obviously made a very positive impression on that young student. And then he gets in a position where he can put you on a television program that gives you millions of eyeballs and millions of exposure and millions of dollars of free exposure. But it was all rooted in the simple premise of you're in there doing the right thing. You're in there trying to teach students, and you built this relationship or established this relationship with, at the time, a person that could do absolutely nothing for you.
Yeah.
But you just sort of did it. And that's what we talk about, is that the core values of building a relationship, it's got to be mutual. It's got to be reciprocal. It doesn't have to be always, what can you do for me? Or I always kind of like being a servant leader, like, what can I do for you? And the other things will take care of themselves. But talk about your, like I said, before we move into the guts, but because this is really an important thing for our kids now. And because, to your point, every interaction that our students have with, say, you or me is going to be an audition. I say it's like it's like driving down the interstate and you've got 3 to 5 to 10 seconds to pass a billboard. Like every interaction from here forward, because you don't know how fast things are going to move. You had this kid in the class, and all of a sudden he's a producer at the Fox network, and then all of a sudden you're on the air and reaching millions of eyeballs. But talk about your philosophy a little bit about that.
Yeah, I like to call it social capital. That every time you interact with somebody, you have an opportunity. You almost like open up a bank account with that person, right? In each relationship, and you have an opportunity to deposit social capital in that account every time you do anything for them, even just saying something nice, being interested in them, being kind to them. You build up some social capital, and early in your career, you want to invest in building your social capital as much as possible, not withdrawing it and taking a bunch of advances, borrowing from it. And I think a lot of young people approach it the opposite way. I know I've been in sort of these events and like networking scenes where people just walk around just handing out business cards. Hi, I'm so and so. Hey, can you introduce me to this person? Hey, what can you do for me? Right? Like, give me your attention, do something for me. And I think that's a much worse approach. That's basically like hey, well, you've never met me. Would you just give me a loan? Like, loan me some social capital, right?
Right.
Instead, if you invest and take the time to be genuinely interested in people, not in what they can do for you, but genuinely interested in them, which always has this awesome benefit, and invest that social capital, something so small as I've done a lot of workshops before where I'll say in the workshop, I'll say, hey, here's a secret I'm going to give you. Thank you notes. If you write thank you notes, handwritten are even more amazing. They're harder and harder, but
Amen.
email at least. If you do those every time you think of someone that you've encountered that you've gotten value from, or even publicly on Twitter, tweet it, a company, a product you use, somebody that came, like when I run these workshops, I'll tell them, you send these thank you notes. And I tell them all these stories about how thank you notes have opened up doors for me in my career and helped overcome people that were hard to work with. I gave them a little personalized thank you and some flowers even in some occasions. And they ended up being really easy to work with after that and after feeling appreciated. So I'll tell them this. I'll tell them explicitly. And then at the end of the workshop, I always wait to see if anybody emails me a thank you for the workshop. And almost nobody does. But those few people who do, I remember them. They go in my mental Rolodex. And they stick out to me as like, hey, this might be somebody I might want. If I'm looking for an intern, that's going to be one of the people I'll call. And it's as simple as an email saying, hey, I really appreciate that workshop. I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. And what you said about this was really interesting to me. Just those little things where you can invest in like letting someone know you're thankful, asking them questions, being genuinely interested in. If you can connect them to people or do favors for them, that's great. Early in your career, sometimes you don't have a lot of ability to do that, but do what you can. But just even asking for advice can be a way to invest in social capital. Because older people like me, I love giving people my opinion. I love telling them all of my wisdom. And so if someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm really curious, here's what I'm looking at in my career, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. That's not them asking me for a favor so much as, it is a little bit, but it's flattering too, right? It's them saying, hey, if you have the time, if you don't, no worries, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts on X, Y, and Z. Even that can be a way to invest in social capital. And so you're on my radar now, and later I'm more likely to think of you for different opportunities.
Well, you must be reading from our script, because all summer long I'm like, the thank you note is a lost art. The follow up, and not only is it's the right thing to do. I know everybody, we rolls their eyes and it's old fashioned, old timey, but I'm like, look, if somebody takes the time to sit down and write me a handwritten note, I knew that they're communicating to me what type of employee that they would be. It's another form of the audition. They're putting the effort in. They're showing the initiative, the thought, the self-starters, the appreciation. And you and I do the same thing. We give the answers to the test out while we're giving the test. Like, hey, write me a handwritten thank you note and you'll get in the top 5 percentile. And it's bizarre and amazing and mind-boggling how many students don't put that time, and they still may claw their way back into my consideration set, but I can tell you the ones that write the note don't ever have to worry about clawing their way back in. And you'll love this. I keep all of those thank you notes and I file them and I catalog them and I read them, and it gives me inspiration. And we got so many great things, this summer, but man, I sure am glad that you hit on that, and build that social capital, because one day you may actually have to make a withdrawal on that.
Yeah.
And you never know when, who, or how that will come in handy. So that's unbelievable to lead in on. So tell our students about Crash, because I think that I'm sure they know about it, but if they don't, it's just amazing to me, the tool that you're building and the resources, particularly now, unwittingly, even COVID and post-COVID. I think it's gonna knock the lights out. But tell our listeners, tell our students what Crash is and where you see they can use that tool as a resource and opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Crash is all about selling yourself on the job market, whether you're looking for an internship or a full-time job, or even freelance or contract work, or whatever kind of career opportunities. Crash is it's like a mindset wrapped in a product, right? So there's a product, it's a set of tools you can use to send tailored video pitches, instead of just sending a generic resume or a generic, dear sir or madam cover letter, to create a short video and showcase, some of your skills through projects and things, and put these pitches together and send them. That's kind of the product, and you manage that all in a dashboard. But it's really all about creating a mindset shift and stepping back and realizing that professional opportunities, the job hunt, any career opportunities, this is a sales and marketing process that you're running for you incorporated. And I know, Vince, you're all about that kind of framework. And if you go about it like, okay, I'll just check off the boxes. Let's see, get the degree, check. get the resume and format it properly, check, click apply 100 times, check, and then I just wait for something to happen. Like if you ran a sales process like that, you would get slaughtered. When you think about your first job, maybe you're going to get a job that pays you $40K to start with. If you were a salesperson trying to close a $40,000 deal, you wouldn't just get one generic one-page PDF and attach it to an email and blast it to 100 potential customers and say, please buy my product for $40,000. See attached one pager. You would research them. You would learn what are their actual needs. What are the problems your product can solve for them? How, who in the company is the best person to contact? What can you contact them with that will just get them on a phone call so you can learn more, and then let you give them a demo, give them a taste of the product. Hey, here's an example. Here's a demo of the product. Here's something that it's doing. It's tangible proof, right? Because this is a big deal. That's your career is a very big deal. And those first opportunities, you're not going to win by just sort of blasting out, sort of spray and pray, as we call it, just clicking apply over and over and over again. There's some interesting stats, and this was pre-COVID, by the way, that for every one job offer, candidates are sending out 150 resumes. And the job hunt, usually they're taking over 90 days before they get their first offer. With Crash, we're telling people, take a different approach here. Go and find companies that you're actually interested in. Spend a little time researching them, learn more about them, see what they're all about, see what opportunities they have. Even sometimes they don't even have a job posting, and you can still get hired there if you pitch them on something unique. Then put together a unique pitch that can't be copied and pasted. So when you send a pitch to Melt, it's, hey, Vince, I'm Joe Schmo. This is what I love about what you're doing in your agency. I'm really passionate about it. I heard your podcast. I want to come on and help you market your podcast. So I put together this little montage of 5 minutes of highlights with cool music on, and here you go. You can have it. You can use it for free. I would love to talk more about doing some of this work, right? You put together a pitch like that. That's something that's almost impossible to ignore. Even if they don't want to hire you, it's almost impossible for them to not respond because they feel like, wow, you took the time. I at least owe it to you to give you a response or give you an interview. So Crash is a tool to help you do that, and we've had really, really phenomenal success. The users on the platform, they're getting an interview for every 3 pitches they create, and a job offer for every 9 pitches they create on average. So yeah, it's been tremendous. Like, people have a hard time shifting their focus because they're like, well, it takes so much time to pitch a company. I'm going to spend maybe a couple hours, maybe even more to create one pitch. Well, I could click apply 100 times. But the ROI is ridiculous. It's way, way higher. We're having people, their time to getting hired is something like 3 weeks or less. And they're getting interviews, like I said, the response rate, even if they don't get an interview, they get a response. The response rate to pitches is about 80%, where you hear back from the person you sent it to. Which is just incredible. It's like, 0.05% or something like that on the typical job application. So that's kind of what it's all about in the mindset behind it.
That is unbelievable, and it is so funny because like I said, you're continuing to read from my playbook the things that get my attention, the things that I respond to, and a couple things. First of all, you would be shocked at how many kids don't think about this. They don't know what to do. They've spent $200,000 on this world-class education, and I'll get a resume in through a generic like careers at Melt ATL website that says, hey, I'm Joe Smith, attaches my resume, and I need to make XYZ dollars. And I'm like going, dude, I'm just flushing your resume without even opening it because you got to sell me. It's like, this is like a blind date. You got to get to the second date. Yeah. And then the second piece is that, you got to know your target. Then because you're in every one of these forms of interaction are job auditions. So, what your product Crash is doing is unbelievable because you're helping them package themselves as a brand. You're communicating to potential employers that this person is putting that effort in. This is the self-starting initiative. This is how they would be as a future employee. And to your point, even if it's not totally 100% on target, the fact that somebody took that time and I'm shocked it doesn't happen more. And that's why I want to get the word out about what you're doing. If they took the time to do these types of things for me, I might even say, hey, look, we're in a COVID, pandemic right now. I'm not hiring, but I may have a project for you to do a test drive on.
Yeah.
And they've cracked that door. There's sunlight coming in through that door. And then to your point, one thing that we really, really talk about, one thing my book's about is that, every student and every college kid and graduate, or even if they don't, they've got to start looking at themselves as a brand. And everything they're doing is positioning themselves as a brand. So talk about how your philosophy on that, and then how Crash helps prepare them to build that brand that they may be pitching to Isaac or Vince Thompson.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about making it easier for the person that you're pitching. Make it as easy as possible for them to say yes. And when you just sort of send, here's a list of bullet points of my, academic history or whatever, work history, it's so much mental work for that person to figure out what that means. Like, what would it be like to work with this person? What does that translate into? I don't know what this means. And so if you can show them, this is what it would be like to work with me, by giving a sample of some kind of tangible work that you've done, or creating something that kind of shows, hey, this is a flavor of what I'm all about, or building a larger kind of brand or body of work so they know what you're all about, it makes it so much easier for them to say yes to at least giving you an interview. So this is, what we found, that the first company I started in 2013, Praxis, was this boot camp where we were training up people and then placing them in these apprenticeships at startups. And what we found in trying to place these people, they had no work history. Most of them didn't have a college degree. And if we sent them to a company and said, hey, you should, hire this person as an apprentice, they didn't have anything to go on. They had no information to go on. And by the way, it doesn't do a whole lot better if you have, a couple bullet points about, I've got a degree, I've got some work history. That's not very deep information. It doesn't tell you very much. And so what do people do? They Google you. Well, what happens if they Google you and they find nothing? You might think, oh, well, that's good. There's no pictures of me drunk. It's like, well, I mean, I suppose, but honestly, finding something is better than finding nothing. And if you're really passionate about something, say you really want to be you want to go into marketing, and you want to go into content marketing, and you want to do video editing and images, and you say that this is what you want to do, and you apply for a job in it, and I go Google you and I find no evidence anywhere that you've ever done anything related to this, well, I'm going to be suspicious. I'm going to think, yeah, you think you want to do this, but you don't really, because if you really did, you'd already have a YouTube channel, or you'd already have a blog post where you're talking about how you taught yourself how to do, images on Canva or whatever, right? Like, so we always talk about this concept of a body of work. You want to create a body of work. The digital age is this tremendous gift where you have the opportunity to create and manage your own reputation like never before. And so you want to be loud. You want to be findable and discoverable. You want a body of work around your interests and abilities so that when someone goes to Google you, they find that. Or better yet, when you pitch them, you can include examples instead of just saying, I'm a good communicator and listing that as a bullet point, team player, right? Instead, you can show a tangible example. Hey, here's a podcast episode I did. Hey, I created this thing with my friends, and here's the, put together a body of work that demonstrates with tangible proof some of those skills and things that you have. And I'll throw one more thought out there, because you made me think of it when you said it's like a blind date. I love that analogy. I use it all the time. When it comes to winning career opportunities, think of it like trying to get a date with somebody. You wouldn't walk up to somebody, or worse yet, you wouldn't walk up to every guy or girl in the bar with a stack of papers that say 10 reasons I'm highly dateable, and just hand them out and hope that somebody gets excited, right? Instead, you find somebody you're actually interested in, you approach them, and you show that it's about them. You show interest in them. You don't say, hey, I'm cool, I'm good looking, I'm funny, you should date me. You say, hey, you're really interesting to me. Tell me more about yourself. I would love to get coffee with you because you interest me. It's just the same on the job hunt. I can't tell you, I'll post a job posting on Angel List or whatever, and I'll get like 200 applicants, and they're all me. Hey, I have 10 years of experience in marketing. I'm really good at this. I'm really good at this. And I'm like, but do you even know what company you're applying to? Contrast that to the one that starts out, crash is so interesting to me. I love your approach. I was following your blog and I read this thing that you said and it really got me excited. I would love to come join your company. Now I'm already warmed up because they're paying attention to me. They're showing interest in me. So that combination of things, build a body of work so you can showcase what you're all about, and so that people, when they look for you, when they think of you, you have a brand, you're known for something, and then show interest in them instead of just saying me, 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 me.
Well, we we hear it a lot. We hear it a lot from our guests is that, and again, a lot of times, the students and the kids they're not exposed to this information as they're going through a traditional 4-year college, and we're pushing a lot of colleges and career departments to really think outside the box like you are and I am. But one thing we really tell these kids is think about how you can bring value to Isaac Morehouse and the Crash organization. Hey, Isaac, I've studied what you're doing. Here's what I did in college, and I think this knowledge and application can bring a lot of value to the Crash organization. So that you hit on that is like, you've got to communicate your value proposition to a potential employer, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk about creating value all the time, and that's a big, just understanding the way the market works, that you don't get rewarded for being a good person. It's great. I hope you're a good person. And like, you may be valuable in the eyes of God and your mother, but in the market, you've got to create value for other people. That's what they care about. And so, hey, I can do things. I have skills. That's fine. But can you do something that's valuable to me? That's what I want to see. And so understanding that and not being offended by it. Some people are offended by that. Well, like, but I'm a good person. I followed the rules. Somebody owes me a paycheck. It's like, no, that's not how it works. They're happy to pay you if you can create value for them. Because if you can create more value than you cost, that's a huge win. So go ahead and start there. And that's where one of the secret weapons here, you mentioned it earlier, is like projects, trial projects, contract work, internships. If you can make it really easy for somebody to say yes to getting your foot in the door, sometimes that's the best way to prove your stuff and to gain valuable skills. So I'll give you an example. People have pitched me before. I've had people pitch me when I'm not hiring and said, hey, I love what you're doing. I put together this video for you. I want to do some more of this type of stuff for your company. And he said, I'm so convinced that I can create value for you. I want to work for free for 2 weeks. And here's what I'm going to do in those 2 weeks. Now I was like, okay, I owe this guy at least a call. So I get on a call with him. I like him. I'm impressed with him. I said, well, we're not hiring right now, but I'll let you talk to a couple other guys in the company and they'll chat with you and see if there's any projects or whatever. So they all like him after they chat. And I said, look, I'm not going to have you work for free for 2 weeks because I want to be able to yell at you if you mess up. So I'll pay you like a little bit. I'll pay you like $500 and we'll do this 2-week trial. And here's what we're going to do over the 2 weeks. And if at the end of that 2 weeks, it's like, oh my gosh, we just need this guy on the team, then we'll talk. But don't get your hopes up. Keep looking for other jobs. He says, great. At the end of that 2 weeks, we were like, oh my gosh, we need to hire this guy, right? And so he made it really easy for me by saying, and you can do this with a project. You can say, hey, what about some sort of a part-time thing? Make it easy for that person to say, all right, I'll give you a shot. And that's more and more companies are doing this, by the way. Their hiring processes are not so much about passing an initial screen and then getting a job offer. They're more like you kind of have some conversations that are maybe a little more casual, and then they throw you a project or an assignment. Sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not. All right, go find 100 leads for me and see how it goes. And if you feel like they're exploiting you and you don't want to do that, of course, don't do that. But if you see this as an opportunity to prove what you can do, I think that's a really great way to go, to get started. So yes, creating value is what it's all about. And the quicker you can demonstrate that, the better.
Well, and we have a saying, I've had a saying for a long time, is that you can't raid the castle unless you get the keys to the front door. That means you got to get in. And it's one of my oldest tricks in the book, being a sort of a smaller fighter agency that punches up in our weight class, is that I'm like, hey, give me anything. Let's do a test drive. Let's do a test run together. Let's see what happens. Let's go through a process. It doesn't have to be all or nothing and anything like that. So I'm trying to communicate to our students that the same things that you and I practice on this side of the fence are the same things they should be trying on the other side of the fence. And so I'm glad you've reinforced so many things that we've taught them. But I want to ladder back a little bit, because you and I share a thing of where we're very passionate about what we do with our lives and our family and our values and our careers and our businesses, and helping kids and students and all that. But I want you to do two things. Where did your passion originally come from? And then talk to our students about following their passion, because we hear that a lot, like, I don't know if I like what I'm studying, and my parents want me to do this and this and that and the other. But I want you to talk about, the passion that has led you on this career path, and then pursuing your passion.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's probably the thing that I've thought about the most in my life in terms of professional stuff. And fit my own process of experimentation with that is kind of what led me to to ultimately founding Crash and to spending the last decade working with young people on their career. Our mission is to help people discover and do what makes them come alive, and that's what makes me come alive, is helping people go from I'm just kind of going through the motions, I'm just doing what I need to survive because I have to yeah, I'm passionate about what I do, I love it. And the way that I found my own career path, and this is mapped onto the advice that I give, was not by trying to figure out what my passion was. That was too hard. That was too daunting. I'm kind of a generalist. I like a lot of stuff. I'm not an expert at any one thing.
Right.
And I just, from a young age, I knew I valued kind of having a lot of freedom in my life, and I wanted to kind of feel like I'm the one in charge of my life. But I didn't really know career-wise, like, what does that mean? And so, I was like in college, I changed majors all the time, and I kind of it started in college. I had this idea that, look, if I'm not enjoying something, I don't think I'm very likely to end up being really good at it. So what if I just, instead of trying to figure out what's my passion, because that just seems daunting so early in life. And like for most people, what you're going to be doing in 10 or 20 years, it probably doesn't even exist yet. So how can you know that that's your passion? Like when I was in college, there was no such thing as Facebook or Twitter or anything. And like there, content marketing wasn't a job, for example, right? There's so many things. So instead of trying to figure out my passion, I thought, I'm gonna make a rule. Don't do stuff I hate. That's gonna be my rule. And if I don't know for sure that I hate something, I'm going to treat it as fair game for experimentation. And I'm just going to take whatever the best opportunity that comes across. I'm not going to stress about whether this opportunity is perfect or does it get me to some specific path. If it's a good opportunity and I don't hate it, or at least I don't think I do, I'm going to try it. And then the more things I try, I can add more and more stuff to that list of things I hate, right? Like, oh, okay, now I know what accounting is all about. Know that I don't want to do that. That's not for me. Add it to the list, right? And over time, I eliminate things from possibility, and the field gets narrower and narrower. And everything that I don't hate is fair game. And so I'm just kind of experimenting and exploring and taking different opportunities as they come. But over time, what happens is I find myself, I keep finding myself doing this type of thing and this type of thing. And I'm doing less and less of things that I hate, which means I'm doing more and more of things that I love. And so instead of, instead of like a painting where you're like, I got to know exactly what I'm going to paint and then plot it all out and paint it perfectly, it was more like a sculpture where it's like, okay, I got this giant hunk of granite. Let's just start chiseling away the parts that I don't want. And let's just keep doing that more and more until we get down to something that I do want. And what I'm left with is something that I love. And so don't do stuff you hate has kind of been my own mantra that's allowed me to discover things in my career. I did fundraising for a nonprofit for years. I never would have, if you would have asked me, do you want to do fundraising? I would have been like, no, that sounds terrible, right? And I would have said no, and I would not have tried to get there, but it would have just been out of ignorance. But instead, I just followed along each step at a time. Okay, well, if I hate it, I'm not going to do it. And once I realize I hate it, I'm going to shift away from it as fast as I can. But otherwise, I'm just going to keep moving forward. And it just allowed me to hone in and eventually become an entrepreneur, which was not something that I had planned or expected either. I just realized I kept adding so much stuff to the list of things that I hate, including being told what to do by other people, that entrepreneurship was the only thing left. So that's kind of the approach that I give a lot of young people is, and I've actually fleshed it out a little bit more with like almost like an intersection of three things. If you picture the three intersecting circles. If you say, I'm not going to do anything that I hate, I'm not going to do stuff that I suck at, and I'm going to do things that people are willing to pay me for. The intersection of those three things, that's where you want to be. It doesn't have to be something you love. It doesn't have to be something that you're incredible at. As long as you don't hate it, you don't suck at it, and someone will pay
Right.
for it, go for it. Try it out and use that as like a journey of exploration. So I find, the roundabout way to, follow your passion is to run away from the things that make you feel dead inside. And before long, you'll be feeling pretty alive.
No, that that's amazing the way that you just diagrammed that out, and I think that the sooner that our students hear that, because it's okay to try a lot of things. It's okay to get your knee skinned. It's okay to get thrown off the saddle. We have a saying within Melt U that failure is only the failure to try.
Yep.
And so, but this has been fascinating. And as we close today, we always love to ask our guest, because you're so inspirational, so much great stuff shared. What are some of the go-to podcasts or books, or not the traditional industry publications and those things of that nature, but what are some go-tos that inspire and inform Isaac Morehouse?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple books, short little books that I've read and reread a handful of times through my career. This first one's going to seem real odd. It's called Finite and Infinite Games, and it's a really short book by a philosopher. And it's just like it's really about seeing life as a series of games, seeing life as a game and changing the way that you approach it. And it's got and especially if you're a sports fan, it's not specifically talking about sport types games, but you'll recognize immediately that kind of mentality of, understanding that like the point of the game is the joy of playing the game and applying that to life. So Finite and Infinite Games has been a really good one. And then The Inner Game of Tennis, which is phenomenal. I'm not a tennis player, but it's essentially similarly. It's about that moment when athletes get in the zone and sort of lose themselves and play unconscious. It's about what that means, and learning how to kind of harness that part of yourself so that you can, when you master things, you can kind of get in that zone. That's been a really great one for me. And then one final one is called The Last Safe Investment. And that is a book essentially about the concept that you are the safest thing to invest in. And when people go around thinking of, oh, okay, well, I gotta pick a career that's really, really safe. Like maybe I'll go, I'll be an accountant. That's really safe. Well, maybe not. I mean, maybe software will take over and do that, right? Or I'll pick, I'll put my money into whatever, real estate. Maybe that's safe. And not that those things are bad. That's part of the equation. But if you zoom out and say, you are really the last safe investment. So anything that you can invest in your own, building your own human capital, building your own value and network, and it kind of breaks down all the ways to do that. That's been a really great book, a really useful book for me. So those are three that I think have been important on my journey.
That is outstanding. And so Finite and Infinite Games.
Yep.
Inner Game of Tennis. I love that one because we all are in competition with ourselves and and others in the marketplace, and obviously in the post-COVID environment, it's going to be even more. And then the last safe investment. I love those three. And so, Isaac, this has just been amazing. Congratulations on what you're doing with Crash. I'm going to encourage all of our listeners to look it up, dial it up. We'll be talking about it more. Hopefully, we've got some good things going on together. Founder and CEO of Crash Career Launch Platform, great entrepreneur, founded Praxis, great family man, lives up in Charleston. Really have enjoyed he and I building a tremendous relationship, and I think that you can see why he's going to be a continuing leader in career development, alternative forms of education. We're going to do a lot of things together. So look up Crash. Make sure you take a hard, long look at it. As you continue back to college in this crazy, uncertain COVID and hopefully post-COVID world soon. But Isaac Morehouse, Crash, thank you so much for your time and wisdom and words of wisdom and advice and inspiration today. We're glad you joined Virtual Melt University.
Hey, Vince, thanks so much for having me, and keep up all the great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.